Hello everyone, it is Joe here from OmniPoke, the channel that brings you guys everything Pokemon, and today we're going to be profiling Raichu Leafeon as requested by a few subscribers. So let's get straight into it. It's a really simple concept. We're trying to have weakness on Seismitoad, and we're also trying to have weakness on Rayquaza, two of probably the more popular decks that people are going to be playing, and then we're going to use non-EX attackers to try and win prize trade and have favourable typing against those two decks that will hopefully bring us some wins. It's pretty similar to like a Flareon style build when we're trying to counter or have an anti-meta solution to a couple of these things. It's not quite as versatile as Flareon decks, but it's very, very fast and very focused at beating a couple of these decks, and also has good matchups almost around the board. I think Donphan does pretty much tear this deck apart, and Landorus is a slightly awkward matchup as well for the most part. But other than that, we should have a pretty good matchup against most things. So let's hop into it. Raichu is probably our main attacker, you'd say. We have Circle Circuit for a double colorless energy, does 20 times the number of your bench Pokemon. Thanks to the new introduction of Skyfield from Roaring Skies, we can hit 160, and then add on a Muscle Band to that. We can knock out any EX around other than those with lightning resistance, such as Landorus. One of the reasons why we have such a terrible Landorus matchup is that Raichu can't one-hit it because of that resistance. So 180, the magic number for Raichu. Circle Circuit killing everything in his path if you want him to. Also, a lot of people are playing Mega Evolutions, so we do stay out of range in that scenario. But we're still hoping to knock out Rayquazas and Mega Rayquazas even, if they don't have Altaria in play. Because of course we are a lightning type attacker, so we can pick up Yveltals and Rayquazas really easily for quite a low bench for the knockout. So pairing in this strategy, because it's very difficult to try and set up 8 Pokemon on the bench and have the Muscle Band, especially under Trainer Lock, we're going to be pairing Leafeon with Raichu in here so that we can handle the Seismitoad decks. Energy Crush doing 20 times the number of energy attached to all of your opponent's Pokemon. So basically we force the Toad player to only play down 1 DCE. So if it's like a Toad Yveltal matchup, they're probably not going to want to over-attach and overextend on their bench, in fear of Leafeon starting to get one-shots on their Seismitoads. So it really does keep Seismitoad decks in check. If it's something like a Seismitoad Slurpuff, they struggle a bit less. Seismitoad Bats and Seismitoad Garb as well. Because they can sometimes play stuff like Super Scoop Up, it can get kind of annoying for Leafeon, but the main factor that Leafeon is so powerful is because we have this -20 resistance down here to water. So Seismitoads, even with a Muscle Band on, are only hitting 30. So that's, without any laser help, that's a 4-shot on Leafeon, which is of course very inefficient. And because we're playing Grass Energy with a Virizion tech that I'm playing, hopefully we can avoid lasers for the most part overall. We'll probably still get hit by like a Crushing Hammer, then laser combo every now and again, but a lot of the time Leafeon is going to stay healthy and unfazed by all of these status conditions, so it's going to be very difficult for Seismitoad players to battle through an army of Leafeon, who will pretty much constantly be 2-shotting these Toad players, while they struggle to 3 or 4-shot us for the most part. So Leafeon's sort of the contingency plan against Toad decks. He's actually very versatile as well. Let's skip back into him. Great against Primal Groudon decks. I know Wobbuffet and Mega Turbo have now been combined with Groudon to try and make a new amalgamation to try and beat stuff like Toad players. Having that grass weakness again on Groudon's very helpful. It's also very, very powerful against Primal Kyogre. They really struggle without any energy. Most of their other attackers are set up via the Primal Kyogre itself, by moving the energy to its other attackers, and even then they play a lot of water types that are all pretty much going to be weak to Leafeon. So Leafeon can really have a cakewalk in those sorts of matchups as well. And even in general, your opponent is forced to basically play down energy to get their attackers off. It's even effective against Yveltal and stuff like that, where they play a fair amount of energy in the deck. So we're always going to get good value from Energy Crush, considering as well we can put Muscle Band and Bangle on here as well to increase our own output. It gets really, really crazy at times, and Grass typing is great to have here for just a single energy. I'll talk about the Virizion now. It just, yeah, like I say, it's for the Toad matchup more than anything. It also does help out against Trevenant Shaman if people are starting to play that. so that we don't get poison damage. So again, the Shaman is doing poor damage against us. Two-shotting the Raichu, two-shotting the Leafeon. It's just not very efficient for them. Also, we can use our own Shaman in that matchup to keep bouncing our own so that we don't ever really see much damage. Obviously, Raichu's a free retreater so that we can keep bouncing into Shamans. So that's a pretty useful strategy when we have Verdant Wind online to prevent our poison. Let's talk about the Shaman now. We have 3 in here. It really helps out us set up our own bench for Raichu, both physically having bench slots via the Shaman, and because of course he tops up the hand to 6. It gives us good outs when we get hit by an N in the late game as well, because every now and then we can attach a DCE and Sky Return to our own hand. This deck, because we're mostly using non-EX attackers, we will have the luxury of a turn or two to use something like a Sky Return for slightly less damage, just so that we can refill our hand the following turns to sort of get ourselves back on track. So if we've been end, it's good to know that we can Sky Return if we need to, but the most part, Shaman is just going to help us speed up the early game and maybe have 1 or so left in the deck to use it at a later time to help us refresh the hand. Finally, for the Pokemon, we've got one Mr. Mime in here, Bench Barrier. Very helpful against Landorus. It's already kind of a dodgy matchup in truth. If you're really trying to counter it, we could go more like a Flareon deck and have maybe a 1-1 or 2-2 Beartic line. It's a thought I've had, but I'm just basically hoping that Rayquaza is so powerful that most people don't want to play too much fighting because of the amount of resistance around. So Mime's still in here just because like Manectric Bats is kind of a thing, and Landorus as well. Just these sniping things we'd just rather not deal with. Even Gallade and Latios, these could be real big threats if you just don't have a Mime in here. So very, very helpful to have in general. The final Pokemon, I've got one Execute in here. As you can see, we've played quite a streamlined list, and using all these Ultra Balls and comp searches, which I'll get onto in a moment, can get quite expensive, so Egg just makes that a lot cheaper. And also, like we've seen with many Rayquaza players, they like to play 1 or 2, sometimes even 3 Execute, so that when Skyfield is bounced, you can discard something like an Egg, propagate it back to the hand, and once you find Skyfield again, you can just pop him back down for a reusable Pokemon to fit that quota for Raichu's attack. So Execute, very, very helpful for the most part, helping Raichu hit those magic numbers and being extra cards in your hand effectively to discard away so that you can keep more important stuff available to you. Onto the trainers now. We've got Comp Search, pretty standard in most decks these days. We've got a Switch and 1 Escape Rope. Escape Rope's still helpful. I like having a split here, seeing as though we do also play a Teammates, which you might have spotted already. Sometimes you can search out one of the ones you want specifically at the time, both of them of course serving the purpose of moving whatever's active so you can get into something you do like. But the Escape Rope sometimes can maybe get you out of a Wobbuffet, get you out of something you don't want in the active position, maybe a Robo Sub, and gust them into something else, like a mini Lysander sort of thing. The Switch, just a normal Switch really. We have a couple of Trainers Mailers in here. If you've not started playing around with this card, it is fantastic for speed decks. It really helps the consistency overall. Gets you into supporters if you've got a supporterless hand a lot of the time. And we're playing, I think it's 31 trainers total in this deck. So you're going to have, most of the time, 2 of the 4 cards will be trainers for you to pick from. And that's the 31 minus the other Trainers Mail that's in your deck. So you're always going to have, statistically speaking, 2 to choose from. And that's always going to be very helpful for Trainers Mail there. Just helping you carry on with your turn. Helps you find stuff like Ultra Ball. This is one of the best cards in the deck right now. Seeing as though we can use Shaman, we can minus our hand to 2, get rid of some junk that we don't need at the time, and then refill with Shaman. Obviously, it's important for us to find stuff like Raichu so that we can get attacking as quickly as possible with it as well. Ultra Ball, just really important. Filling up the bench, finding Shamans, and also finding the Raichu. You're rarely ever going to need to search out Leafeon because we have Grass Energy to do that for us. Unless we are under some sort of ability lock. Finally, for regular trainers, we've got VS Seeker, putting supporters back from the discard pile. We all know what it does. It's all pretty standard stuff in most decks these days. It's interesting to see how this card's developed. Because so many people are playing Trump card now, you actually do see a lot of players use VS Seeker even after they've used a supporter for turn, just in case they get Trump carded. It's an interesting debate. I still normally like to hold VS Seeker in hand for the most part. But you do have to be careful, just on a side note in general, really, guys. So many people play Trump Card, and if your opponent's down to like a 5 or 6 card deck, you might want to start using your VS Seekers early and just have the supporters in hand, because you can expect a Trump Card to be coming any moment. But yeah, still really, really important and useful. We actually play one of our own Trump Cards, just refilling the whole deck. Seeing as though we're trying to hit for weakness and have good attackers for different matchups, if maybe 1 or 2 of them are prized, as you can see we're playing a 3-3 count here, and a 4-3 count of the Leafeon, just because I like starting with Eevee best, because it can just evolve into Leafeon turn 1, so you effectively have 100 HP on turn 1, rather than Pikachu that can just get killed quite easily. But either way, if 1 or 2 of these Leafeon or Raichu are prized, it can get quite awkward into the mid to late game. Trump Card can refill those attackers back into the deck. Also, against stuff like Crushing Hammer and Enhanced Hammer, there's quite a few of those decks around at the moment with Toad decks, Toad Shaman, even Toad Puff is still around, and Toad, Shaman Trevor. All of these sorts of trainer locks are hitting the forefront right now, and they love to hammer spam as well, so refreshing these with Trump Card, very, very useful. The other one-of supporter we have in here is a single teammates. Seeing as though we're mainly using non-EXs to attack, and because they can normally be so threatening to the opponent, they're forced to attack into our non-EXs a lot of the time. They'll probably have the luxury to Lysander a Shaman here or there, but for the majority of the time, a Raichu that can hit to knock out EXs for just a DCE, they're going to have to deal with that. So a lot of the time with VS Seeker spamming, we can get 2 or 3 uses out of teammates over the course of the game, which is really, really nice for helping us reset up after a Leafeon or Raichu is knocked out. For the 2-of supporters, we've got 2 Lysander in here. Lysandering around Trevenant to buy us trainers. Lysandering around Wobbuffet to get into our abilities. Lysandering Donphans up is very important. And just in general, picking off the things we need. Raichu is such an efficient killer of Shamans, even if we've not had a strong setup, or even if it's turn 2 of the game and it's our second turn and we've not had the perfect setup, we can just Lysander and kill a Shaman. We only need 3 bench Pokemon, or 2 plus a Bangle, to take 2 prizes. It's just really easy for Raichu to do that. So Lysander's good. Even in the early game, you can just go ahead on prize trade and hope to draw into better stuff off of those cards. So the other supporters we have, a couple of N in here. I like using N. I've originally had like a really high trainer count in here, like loads of roller skates and acrobikes. But I felt N gave me a bit better consistency, a bit better matchup overall against Seismitoad. We already have the weakness, but having actual less trainers in the deck gives you a stronger matchup against Toad, because you have more usable cards, of course. So I still value N in here. And also against these Donphan decks, against Landorus, they love going ahead, and sometimes an N can put them back into a state where we can maybe try and claw back the game. I'll be honest, guys, those 2 matchups are disgusting. We're just hoping, like I say, Rayquaza sort of keeps those at bay. Either that, or you can go to more of a Flareon style build, either going for an Archie's Trump Card with Empoleons, or, like I say, the Beartic that's DCE compatible is a very effective killer out of both of those things. I've not found the space, to be honest. We could probably cut like the Mime, the Egg, the Eevee, and maybe a Shaman or a Trainer that we don't really need as much, maybe even a Skyfield for a 2-2 Beartic line. But I feel I'd show off a consistent list for now and let you guys tinker around with it if you want to take this deck further. Finally, we've got 2 Chorus I'll talk about. They just get so strong with Raichu and Skyfield. We're normally going to get 10 plus cards out of the Chorus, and having it VSC Cribble as well, just really, really strong draw power in the deck. Juniper as well, pretty standard. The best pretty much turn 1 supporter we can ask for. It's just really good in here. We've got the 4 Skyfields. I have maxed out because if you are using Raichu, he's crucial. He's the one that's going to be taking knockouts on EXs if they're not playing Mega Evolutions, so it's really, really important. And yeah, maxing it out so that we can keep bouncing every other stadium, so that we can keep our Raichu powerful. It's not too bad if you can miss knockouts, but it does sort of hurt. And if Leafeon's going to be useless in that matchup, we need the Raichu to be hitting as hard as possible. In that sort of same vein, we're playing 3 tools in here, 2 Muscle Band, 1 Bangle. The 10 extra damage that the Bangle can provide against EXs can sometimes come in handy. And also just having a couple of Muscle Band allows us to sometimes hit with Shaman. And most of the time, hitting that 180 is the magic number for Raichu. So the 20 boost does suffice for the most part. Onto the energy, we've got the 4 DCE, the 6 Grass. It's pretty standard. I like the number of 10. It's just, we're always going to draw into decent amounts of energy. And it's not so much that we just get loads and Shaman's just only ever drawing us into energy. Although the Grass can search out Leafeon, so it's sort of an out into a search card. It's just multi-purpose in here. Very, very useful stuff. It's a very fast, powerful deck, and very simple laws of how to win. We're trying to be non-EXs, hitting for big damage very cheaply and pretty quickly as well. So let's hop into a few games now, and hopefully we avoid Donphan and So, just had to get into a different game because I had to help someone with a trainer challenge thing. He had to evolve like 10 dark types, which is kind of fun. But we've got ourselves a game now against Alp5190. And looks like he's playing Rayquaza, so this plays right into the strategy. Hopefully we can demonstrate the power here of our Raichus. We start with Execute, which is of course fantastic for us. But we'll see what we can do here. We're going to attach to the egg turn 1, so we're never going to get attacking anyway, so pretty safe there. We can comp search to find ourselves a Shaman. Actually, we're going to find a Pikachu, I think. We quite happily can Juniper here. We could also Trainer's Mail. Find ourselves teammates, slap it in the discard pile for VS Seekers in the future. So we'll just go for that. And we find another Pikachu. Mr. Mime's not going to be too helpful, but he does add up our numbers. And we can leave it there. We've got a Chorus for next turn, so if Rayquaza does do its thing, we should be able to get a good hand off of that Chorus there. So looking good for us so far. And we'll see how well this Rayquaza can set up. The more the better, in my opinion. If he gets Skyfield and stuff for us, it's just helping out us even more. Until he does find that Altaria for himself. We see an Acrobite getting rid of a DCE, so I imagine it was a good card. A Winona here, and we'll see if he plays Altaria, and if indeed he wants to search it out straight away. We see a Shaman, a Mega, and another Rayquaza, so no signs of Swablues or anything so far. Looks like he's more interested in getting into a Mega Evolution early on and getting more cards from Shaman. Can't blame him. He could still well play Swablu and Altaria. He just didn't look for it straight away. We see an Acrobike. So definitely a trainer-focused build of Rayquaza. We see Skyfield come into play. Makes ours useless, but also helps us out if we can find more Pokemon here. And then we just see a VS Seeker for another Winona for next turn, it looks like. So we can attach to Pikachu. We may as well pay Retreat, I think. I mean, we could use the Switch and Juniper. I think that's actually stronger. We want to have good odds of finding a Raichu. And a couple more Pokemon here. So we'll go for that Juniper. We find ourselves a Pikachu, a Raichu. So at the moment we're hitting 160. We can Shaman for 2. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This Shaman is actually the 6th to get us that magic number. For the early knockout, we actually find an Ultra Ball as well. We can Ultra Ball away a Grass Energy and a Skyfield to find ourselves. I think we're going to look for an Eevee here, just so that we have more. Actually, we could go for the other Shaman. I think that's fine as well, just for some more cards, I guess. We find an Eevee, slap him down. Just doing this so that we can fill up the bench and keep it there in that state. So even if he does get Altaria, Raichu can kill these other guys quite easily. So we've got a pretty good hand here as well. We get the knockout quite early on against Rayquaza. We've got the VS Seeker for teammates if he has a response KO. And it looks like we're pretty much set for game already. We actually picked up, and there it is. Simple as that. Our opponent had no answer to Raichu, and that is why he lost. You need to play Altaria, guys. Otherwise you will get wrecked by Raichu. I think that's actually the best representation of showing off Raichu. I could carry on just playing more decks, but that is the idea. We're meant to absolutely abolish any Rayquaza decks and deal with Toad as well quite nicely. So we just did our thing, and our opponent gave up after a turn. It looked quite obvious that they didn't play Altaria. Otherwise, I would have seen probably the Shaman and then a Shame and a Swablu on Altaria. Alternatively, he could have gone Mega and then gone for the Swablu Altaria just to survive a turn. But with no sign of it in our opponent's deck, they will definitely fall prey to Raichu. I keep tangling up my words. And even if people do play a 1-1 or 2-2 Altaria, sometimes a Lysander can be enough. Lysander kills the Altaria. Even with something like a Leafeon, it can be effective, so that our Raichu stay healthy to start one-shotting these Rayquazas so easily, and they just can't keep up with that sort of prize trade. So there it is, guys. Leafeon Raichu doing its thing, very strong against those two decks, that's undoubtable. But over the whole board, it will find weaknesses against stuff like Landorus and Donphan. So that's my profile, guys. I hope you enjoyed. Leave your comments down below on how you would play this deck, and see you guys next time.